Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine.
Today's
So
film.
Dan,
It's been a while, huh?
Podcasting. Did you hear we were on hiatus for a bit, dude?
I did hear that, yes.
Something about like big stuff going on. Did you want to share stuff about that? I think some sort of like you had to go away for some sort of like tactical espionage mission, CIA stuff.
Yeah, the hiatus was definitely me. It was definitely because of me.
Well, yeah, it was. I remember. Just kidding. I'm trying it. See, I haven't podcasted for a while, so I don't even know how to do a cold open. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
I was trying to put Daniel on the spot, but I don't even know what the spot is anymore. And even like getting ready for this episode, I was like, wait, am I recording today? Like even texting Dan to get ready for the episode, I was like, hey, I only just got back from the gym. Like I gotta eat something. So we had to push back a recording time. But that has nothing to do with the movie we're going to be talking about, Inside Out. That has nothing to do with why we're on hiatus, which we'll also talk about. In fact, this is exactly the thing that Daniel doesn't want us to be doing, which is the nonsense where we just talk and not get into the subject.
I just feel bad because you're the one who edits the show. So.
That's true. Yeah. Anne has to do all the artwork. Anne has to put it on the website. Anne has to do it.
I just talk for like an hour and then I go on with my day. And
it's sick.
I tweet.
You co-opted the Twitter.
It really is. Like, I don't know if anyone listening actually follows us on Twitter, but it really did slowly just morph into my personal Twitter account. So there's like an unusual amount of Twitter activity that's like me tweeting about like MMA or wrestling or something.
I was just gonna say, yeah, probably wrestling and all that jazz.
And occasionally I'll like tweet about movies or something Christian related.
Just occasionally. Whenever there's overlap.
I will say that was in my mind. I'm like, I'm keeping it alive because we didn't have any like episodes to promote or anything. I was like, at least because the thing that kills when you look up like a show or something. I don't know if anyone else does this, but I look up like the social media for like a podcast or YouTube show, and nothing like kills my interest. And if I see like they haven't tweeted in 5 years,
right,
then I'm just like, oh, is this like still a show? Like, is this a thing that exists? So.
That's probably like our Facebook.
I randomly resurrected our Facebook page.
Oh, sick, dude. Are you posting on it?
Just memes every once in a while.
Nice.
Our engagement's way down though. Way down. So
yeah, if people didn't know, I actually got rid of my Facebook and it was pretty like impromptu. So I think I remember seeing a message in a chat group with Dan and he goes, well, I guess I can run the page. It was just like, that was it. So
it's so weird because like imagine if like, I mean this did happen to someone I know, but like imagine if like you're working at like the Gap or something and just suddenly your boss is like, I don't exist anymore, bye. And you just kept having to come to work, just like, oh, I guess we still sell clothes, you know. So
it's like from The Office when there isn't a boss for a while, and Jim I think is talking about like, wow, it's weird, like even when the boss isn't around, people still just keep working. Nothing changes. It does better. It was the best 3 months they'd had, I think, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, because productivity was up because they didn't have
Because he didn't have a boss to
Steve
ruin
Carell
everything.
destroying them. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh man.
yeah, but it's good we cut the nonsense out of our show, right?
Yeah, isn't it
Got
great?
right into it.
Right into it in 5 minutes. Hey, it's still 5 minutes though. That's good. That's literally 4 minutes and 13, 14, 15, 16 seconds. So that's within margins.
Are we doing the movie first, and then we're talking about?
We can talk about the movie first.
Okay.
We can talk about Inside Out first, because it's definitely like we were on hiatus because of me, not Daniel. Just to clear that up.
Thank you.
And it's going to be interesting to talk about, even as I'm sort of talking about it, preparing to talk about it right now. I almost feel like underprepared, but it's like it's one of these subjects as we get into it that like you can't really be prepared for. But I've also talked with a lot of friends and family about why I was like not just on hiatus, but in my personal life, what was going on so much that it's sort of like a rehearsed script, internally at least. And so, but talking about Inside Out will help us kind of like put it into perspective, and also it's a good movie, so it's like it's going to be weird for people who are like, why are you talking about Inside Out and not Soul? But we could still talk about Soul, but Inside Out will just be a lot easier, I think, even though the two are pretty similar in terms of mindfulness and emotional awareness. I would say so.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dan, why don't you get us started on let people know what Inside Out is if they didn't know, because it's from like 2015 and it's like 2021.
Well, Inside Out is a 2015 picture from Pixar. It is written and directed by Pete Docter, who also did Monsters, Inc. and Up. Initially, Pete Docter wrote the story along with Ronnie Del Carmen, and the actual screenplay is credited to Docter, Meg LaFoe, and Josh Cooley. Though with most Pixar productions, it was kind of an all hands on deck experience. So they wrote it, they storyboarded it together collectively. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Pixar creative process, but what they do is they write the movie by also doing all the storyboards, and they make a rough cut of the film, watch it, and then go back and do it all over again and change things, which is part of why they have such a good string of quality. The film is about 11-year-old, make sure I get the name of the character right, Riley, who is a happy child with their family, but then she and her parents move to San Francisco because her father's doing a startup company. And this pivotal moment is sort of a big emotional change for her. Up to that point, Riley is your typical child with a mostly happy childhood, and we see this experience through the eyes of the 5 emotions that are personified in her brain: joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger, voiced by an all-star comedy cast. You have Amy Poehler, Louis Black, Mindy Kaling, Bill Hader, and of course, that lady from The Office, whose
Phyllis Smith.
Phyllis.
She's great.
Who steals the show is Sadness. And the voice acting across the board is just tremendous. Amy Poehler is giving one of the best performances of her career, in my opinion. Phyllis as Sadness is just tremendously pitch perfect.
So good. Yeah.
And so through this journey, we sort of see both Riley's emotional development as well as the emotions in her brain sort of discovering the value in each other as they go upon this journey of navigating Riley's emotions, as well as the, I wouldn't say traumatic, but difficult things that come with moving, changing schools, and just life not being as perfect as you once thought it was. So I greatly enjoyed the film, but this was your pick for the episode. And so I wanted to know what you thought of it first.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, you know what, I'll just get right into it, because the reason I picked Inside Out is because for a couple weeks I was awaited like a semi inpatient program for depression and anxiety called The Center, A Place of Hope. It is started by Gregory Jantz, who's written a lot of self-help books with a Christian perspective. It's actually helped with my mom with some of the things she's gone through. One of his books was just really, really, really helpful for her. And so that's how I actually learned about it, is, you know, going to my parents for guidance and help on where to go. She recommended this guy and said, like, this is great. And then also my mom's a counselor, and without prompting asked the lead counselor through her practice and said like, hey, I'm working with a client, of course it was me, who is looking for a place to go. Where should he go? And her boss or coworker said like, oh, the center for sure. Like, it's the best place to go to. They have great counselors, like world renowned people, stuff like that. So, I went there, and being there without pretty much anything that's my typical usual stuff, like video games and movies. Inside Out was the only movie I watched while I was there. I did watch another one, but that was because I can explain it. But like, Inside Out, they actually showed as one of the days, like not days, like one of the classes. I forget which particular one. Basically, the day was broken up into like hour and a half chunks of particular subjects. From like, you would talk about emotional abuse, and then you would talk about anxiety and stress, and then you would talk about like family and all these things. And one class, again, I don't remember which one, but it was just Inside Out, and which was great because it was the first movie I'd watched in 2 weeks. So that was pretty cool. And there's just a lot of great stuff in it, especially now that like I was literally learning how the body works, how the mind works, and how like really the Lord has created this amazing machine. Doesn't sound like the right word to talk about the human body, but like the amazing machine that is how the body protects itself, takes care of itself, through emotions, through physical stuff, through memories and all that jazz. It's really impressive. And then you're watching this Pixar movie that basically personifies it in a cute and colorful manner, but it's also deeply complex. So my experience having watched this film was really interesting because I'm watching it in the middle of this, which apparently isn't uncommon. I think a lot of counselors have not only had clients watch it, or practices have had clients watch it, but also I think my mom said like she literally had a class while learning how to do counseling just show her Inside Out, which is pretty cool. And I do know that the background for the movie is that Pete Docter and Pixar and crew had a lot of doctors come in to help. In fact, they only cover 5 emotions in the movie, but there's like 12 or 14, I think, that are primary emotions. I can't remember.
It's conflicting. Some people go as low as 3, some go as high as in the 20s.
Yeah, and like Pixar was just like, look, we can't balance that many characters, and we need a few more than 3. So they put in, 5. And it's a pretty, like, you get what you need for the movie, and you get what you need for understanding the themes and stuff. And I really loved it. Having like kind of the knowledge of sort of things like how, like in one particular instance in the movie, they have to wait. Riley's asleep and she's very stressed. She's definitely depressed. There's a lot of things going on. But when Riley goes to sleep, the brain kind of shuts down and the emotions can't do anything. I forget what the particular thing is, but like all of the parts of the brain are like, look, we're on break. We're going to go chill and do nothing. So Joy and Sadness decide, well, we got to go wake her up. We're going to go mess with her dreams. And Joy's like, we'll give her the most happy dream in the world and we'll wake her up. And it's Sadness, I think, has a great line. It's like, when has that ever happened? When has like anyone ever woken up from a good dream? And the whole point is that what's going to wake her up is like this nightmare, this thing that's going to terrify her and gets you up. And like, we were just learning that like the understanding for nightmares in terms of psychology is that your body is trying to tell you like, look, you're in danger. You got to get up. You got to fix this problem. And that's weird in a first world country where like, we're not always in danger. But then like, if you were to take stock of your life and the time you had a lot of nightmares, you would find like, oh, there's a lot of things upsetting me. There's a lot of problems going on. There's a lot of this, that, unsafety. So then of course I'm having nightmares because my body's like, what the heck are you doing, dude? We got to get you up. We got to wake you up. And like, having watched it with that knowledge and several other bits and pieces made it really connect with me a lot. I also found it really funny. There is a scene, I think, what is it, really early on, they are afraid of like, no, one of the emotions talks of fear is like, there was a bear out there, and someone's like, no, it was just a really hairy man. But they're in San Francisco. I don't think I need to explain the joke much further, but it was just, I was the only person laughing at that joke at the center. And then the bear comes up again in a dream, which was really funny. Yeah, I loved it. I watched it again like 2 nights ago in prep for this, and I'm just weeping. My wife is weeping, and it's just like, it's great. So I really like it. I saw it at an interesting very sensitive time for me too. So there's that. And there's going to be plenty for us to talk about as we as well. Now you know why the hiatus existed, but while we expand on the hiatus and my experience there. But Dan, I think I remember you telling me that you also caught Inside Out at a pretty interesting time in your life too.
That is true. Good segue. So
Zingo.
I saw the film shortly after I was discharged from my own inpatient stay, which I believe we mentioned previously on the show. And I saw it with a friend of mine, and she is Joy from the movie. She is
like your friend is literally just Joy.
She is essentially that character.
She's the kind of friend who, when you're crying, she does funny faces and patronizes you.
Yes, she physically can't stop smiling, which is barely an exaggeration. She literally, at school, we would be like, "Can you just not smile?" And she would try, and she'd frown for a little bit, and then she would slowly start to smile again.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
No, she's one of the most universally well-liked people I've ever met in my life.
That's great.
But it's funny, we saw the movie, and then after, she was like, "I didn't like sadness. She was so annoying." It's like, I don't think you understood what that movie was about. But so I saw it shortly after getting out of inpatient psych stay. Which somebody, I feel like if they just like looked at the release date of this movie, they could try and like figure out like when I was in the hospital. But essentially around opening night, we saw it. And I also was very like emotionally touched by the film for the same reasons, just learning that dour emotion, sadness, really feeling the extent of your sadness is not bad. It's when these things are sort of out of proportion in our lives, where you try and disproportionately be happy all the time, or if the inverse is to happen, where you're disproportionately we're sad all the time. And I think a lot about some of the film's end conclusions, which is just every emotion has its proper place in our lives. And in reality, as we emotionally mature, which is kind of what Riley learns and was illustrated beautifully in the film, is like, it's not so much that we feel these things in singular, like either you're happy or you're sad. It's that our lives are filled with complex moments, which call for complex emotions, or sometimes you feel a mixture of happiness and sadness at the same time.
Right.
So that was exactly the kind of movie I needed to see at that time. And then I saw it a second time, which was on when we were taking the youth group to a youth retreat, and we just played that as the in-house movie on the bus ride up. And so I got to see a bunch of like 11-year-olds cry when Bing Bong dies, which is equally as an emotionally satisfying moment for me. So yeah, it's a movie that I've seen periodically off and on throughout the years, and always at interesting times. Even now, I'm watching this, and as I told you right before we went live, where my wife and I are planning on moving soon. And this will be the first time in my life that I've lived fully on my own, not with like roommates or with my parents or her parents. And so even now I'm seeing this like movie about change and all the complex emotions that come with change. And I am experiencing one of the biggest changes of my life. So it's this weird bookmark in my life for like big moments almost. So obviously, as you can guess, I really like the movie. I like most Pixar films. That's one of the weird things between us, is that you traditionally don't like Pixar movies for some reason.
It's not that I don't like them. I just haven't watched them. And I know it's just a whole world that I haven't gotten into. But I want to. It's just I never committed. And then lately, like, I've just been playing a lot of video games. So I just don't have time. So
it's fun watching you discover them, because then you're like, Inside Out is great, and then later text me, Soul is great. It's just like suddenly like, have you heard of these, Dan? It's like, yeah, these movies are great.
What a surprise. I really liked when you were talking about how emotions have their purpose, because like one of the big things in this movie too is that like sadness is is the external indicator to tell other people you need help. And I think that that's really difficult for people to embrace, because we cover a lot of well, maybe we haven't covered a lot of movies where this is the case, but there are a lot of movies that exist where it's the lone hero fixes his problems. But even the way scripture talks about how we solve problems is it's very communal. Like I was marveling at the idea that like, it's not that there's an individual saint. It's always a plural saints. And it's always a group of people succeeding in objectives and in ultimately honoring the Lord together. And sadness can be that indicator to the group that there's something wrong here and we need to solve it. Especially if you're looking at it in terms of the body of Christ, it's like the reason I have pain in one part of my body is so the other parts of my body can compensate or help. It's not so that we can just draw a chalk circle around it and tell it to stay in its area and maybe just read some manuals. Like, no, you actually need it to participate. And when you suppress those emotions, or even carrying with the example of like this body, when you suppress or ignore these particular needs that need to be met, you have catastrophic and chaotic results. I mean, the entire movie is the movie definitely emphasizes she's depressed by the end of the movie, but like she has depression immediately, because both Joy, when she's not allowed to be sad because her mom says, if you and I can keep a happy face or a smile on our face while dad is trying to figure things out, everything will be okay.
Right.
Like that is kind of like more of a complicating incident following the emotions theme of the movie than the moving to the home. Because now she has this like, no, I actually need to be sad to tell them that something's wrong, but I'm not allowed to be, so I'm going to try and be happy. But you can't. And one of the things while at the center that one great example they had is that an emotion kind of needs to be like passed through, like ride the wave, was a phrase that was used a lot. But basically the example we got was an emotion enters the house and exits the back door. But if you shut that back door, the emotion can't exit. Now it's stuck and it's it's like broiling inside. It doesn't go anywhere. It just stays. And now other emotions that want to pass through can't, because if you open that back door, the emotion you don't want's going to get out. And so like, you can't be happy because you're always worried that like something will make you sad. Or you can't, if you're not allowed to get angry, then you can't get sad, because if you're sad about something, sometimes anger is paired alongside that, because anger is usually used to correct wrongs. And typically, something's wrong because it's made you sad. And so like emotions are working in tandem together, but if you're suppressing one of them, you're going to suppress others, and then depression hits, and then you have difficulty getting out of bed, and you start wondering why you're doing anything, and you don't eat and you don't drink and whatever, because you're spending all your time focusing on keeping this one thing from coming out. I intended to get the particular name of this psychiatrist that wasn't there, but we watched one of his videos, who actually would say that, like, Dan, you said the moving wasn't trauma, and the other things, not a lot of trauma is going on in the movie. But this one psychiatrist said that he felt trauma was basically just a misunderstanding of reality. And so something like her being told, you have to keep smiling so dad can keep focusing, would be trauma, because the reality is no, she doesn't. Like, she needs to let them know, not that she needs to, but it would be helpful for her to let them know, like, I'm really unhappy about this move. This really sucks. I miss my friends. I embarrassed myself on my first day of school. Because then your parents can step in and love you, which of course is how the movie resolves. Sidebar. We intended to we're not, who cares about spoilers anymore? We're just talking about them. If you're listening to this episode, you've already seen Inside Out. But we were going to emphasize, before we talked about the end of the movie or pivotal points, we were going to say, we're going to talk about spoilers now. But what's the point? Who cares anymore?
It's also like a 6-year-old movie. So.
It's a 6-year-old movie. You've seen it before. The more important subject here is the hiatus anyway.
Yeah, nobody's clicking finally they're talking about Inside Out.
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
Inside Out is just the means to talking about this. But anyways, that psychiatrist would call that trauma, because now this young girl might feel that problem solving requires we don't have bad feelings. We need to maintain good feelings while problem solving, when in reality, that's not always the case. Being sick causes bad feelings. You can't just have joy and feel good and that'll go away. If that's how it was, then Vin Diesel would have defeated coronavirus in March when he was like, look guys, we got to show COVID it's not going to win. Come out and see my movie. That's just not, it's not how it works. You got to feel bad sometimes to know how to get better. Anyways, I don't really know where I'm going with that anymore, but the Vin Diesel thing felt right. So I just, wanted to drop that in there.
It's always a good time to mention Vin Diesel. So
I miss Facebook's, I miss on Facebook his old Vin Diesel posts? You remember seeing those
Yes.
from like 2008 and 9, where they're like really low res images of him, but like Photoshop with flowers, but they're posted on his official page.
Which I'm pretty sure is run by him.
Yeah, so
Like,
it was really cute. It was the sort of thing like your grandmother would do, but it's Vin Diesel. He's like between sets at the gym, and he's like, "This is a good post." Puts it up.
What a unique creative voice he is. Like, I legitimately enjoy like him as somebody who has sway and power in Hollywood, because he makes just the worst decisions with his own career consistently.
But he's fine. Like, he's doing great. He's like, and he can do whatever he wants. He was on Flip? He was on Critical Role, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he has his own D&D
because he plays a lot of
podcast.
Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, so like he's fine. You let him post Grandma post. Where's the minions? He's got to post some minions.
Well, you strongly get the impression, and I don't know if he's ever outright said this, but like he does Fast and Furious movies to fund another like Last Witch Hunter type movie, or Babylon AD, like these weird high concept fantasy sci-fi films that he clearly wants to do more of.
He wants to do more Riddick, probably. Doesn't he love
loves
Riddick? Yeah, he loves Riddick.
It's based on his own original D&D character or something like that.
So cool.
Which makes so much sense. But
he should do another video game, because I know that game was supposed to be really good. Like one of the best early stealth games ever made.
Yeah. Escape from Butcher Bay and Assault on Dark Athena are great games. I've played both of them to completion. They're awesome.
Yeah,
games.
I played them while I was an inpatient. This is great.
Did you really?
No, I didn't. I did play video games. When we get to, I don't know, we forgot to talk about this, but we're going to do recommendations at the end of our episodes now. And I'm going to be talking about a recommendation that is absolutely relevant to the inpatient. And it's not go to inpatient, although maybe some people would be benefited by going to
Should
inpatient.
do it.
But
only for a limited time is my opinion.
Can't be dependent on it, but 6 weeks is pretty good. Hey, if your insurance is going to pay for it, you might as well go. I mean, I literally I said inpatient, but I said it was like kind of inpatient because I was also sort of outpatient. One of the other people who was there who had been in inpatient before said this was the most outpatient inpatient they'd done, because they're living in a condo on a busy street toward like in a main town. Like where a lot of shops are and a lot of stores are. And then you look out the window and there's Mount Olympus and the mountains. Look a little below, there's a sound you can go visit and go fishing. Like, it was wild. So I don't know, if your insurance pays for you to go to the center, you can work out your childhood trauma and also get some really good seafood, dude.
Did they secretly sponsor this episode? What's happening?
No, but I got a lot of their like when I was like my last few days, I took a ton of like business cards for the counselors, because it's like, I don't know, if I do another podcast, I could call them. I could just be like, hey, you want to be on an episode of really independent niche underground podcasts?
Your program does sound more like what we did as like a partial program than like actual inpatient, essentially.
That'd be cool.
I was very impressed by like how they didn't sponsor this episode, to be clear, but I was very impressed by like how much freedom you all were given as part of the program.
Yeah, it was like I would be there at 9, be done at 5, and it was like, hey, do you want to get an Uber to go to the thrift store? And so we did, like, those stuff, and it was part of what, like, you're getting better, and then also experiencing what it's like to be living in a safe area, and so that's what was really good.
So do you have anything else to say about Inside Out? Or
I mean, it's good. The theme song still gets stuck in my head. I think it's cute. I think we get really like it's one of those movies that's sort of like, if you start talking about it too much, you're just talking about what's good about it and not like anything more interesting than that. That sounds so reductive to quality, but it's true. Like, I could talk about how like the reason she's 11 is because statistically, like 11-year-old boy or girl is typically the age when you have that serious drop off from constantly happy to, oh wait, like the world's not perfect and my parents aren't the superheroes.
Gain self-awareness.
Yeah, you start to have your To Kill a Mockingbird moment, where it's like,
or your dad has to sometimes shoot dogs in the street. Yeah.
Oh my god,
we've all been there.
Oh, that's right. The dog gets rabies in that, or there's a rabies dog in the street at some point in the book, right? I can't even remember.
Yeah, and her dad has to shoot it.
Yeah, I really want to read that book again. It's a good one, but like, at the end of the day, it's like we're just talking about what's great about it, and like I don't know, I think that's fine. There's a lot of things to talk about, but no, I don't. I don't know. Is there? What a great episode to come back on. This movie's
still got
good.
it, baby. We still got it. Haven't missed a step.
This movie's good, like obviously.
You're talking about like let's limit these episodes to 40 minutes. Based on this like method, we could do like 3 minutes. Like, is it good or bad? It's good, and that's it. Like, thumbs up.
I've had some interesting thoughts about film criticism while away too, because I was like, what's the point? Like, why are we trying to say something's good when like one of my favorite movies is The Last Broadcast, and some people just think it's just a vehemently bad movie. Like, I like it. It connects with me. So that's it. Like, what else is there to talk about? Like,
I want there to be like a running plot in our show now where it's like you slowly reveal more of your revelations you had while gone, and then slowly but surely you start saying like the Unabomber type things. What is film criticism? Why do we even bother? Like, what is society? Maybe we should start over, Dan. You know.
We'll do that when we do our Zack Snyder Justice League episode.
I feel like we missed the boat on it. Like it's the amazing thing about
anymore?
That.
Like, it's done.
It came out, and then it's just like everyone immediately moved on.
Like the New Mutants. Who cares? It doesn't matter.
Brilliant.
It's ridiculous.
I will say that as far as like, I will say that upon rewatching Inside Out for this, like, there's a lot of like kind of subtle things I really appreciate about it. Which initially you get those like strong overall emotional takeaways from the film about, you know, like it's okay to be sad. Sadness is how we connect with other people who are suffering. One of the experts I talked about sadness is a community bonding experience, like as we grieve together and which is something you see biblically, like, you know, they would take time away to like grieve and weep with each other.
Weeks or months.
Yeah.
It was long.
They were its own event essentially.
Meanwhile, we're just begging for healthcare.
Whoa. Didn't see that pivot in the episode. But as much as it is an episode about, as much as it is a film about like going through almost what like a depressive episode, it is kind of just a look at growing up, because so much of the movie is about the general melancholy that comes with just change. You know, all those islands that she loses, the Goofball Island, all these things like hockey to an extent, like that's just, we all have interests and hobbies that we're really passionate about as children that go away. We all have like this childlike wonder that we kind of lose. And it's neither a good or bad thing. Like, I'm sure there's some people, probably people that work at Pixar, that Goofball Island never fully went away. But like, as we grow and change, like we lose some things. We lose imaginary friends. We lose pets. We lose friends. You know, friendships we form when we're in grade school typically are not the same friendships we have in high school and college. And that's neither good nor bad. That's just the way things happen. And it's such, one thing I love about Pixar films is they refreshingly present children with morals and themes that aren't necessarily easy to follow, or even things you want to learn as a kid. Like, hey, guess what? You're going to move away from your friends and you're not going to be friends with them anymore. Yeah. And that's okay. You know, that's tough. Like, Up is a film that's about like dreams don't come true. The end. Sometimes they don't, you know, and that's okay. Yeah. And it's like, wow, like when you compare that to so many other kids' films, which have these like really lame surface level, like morals and ideas, where
you mean like the Emoji Movie?
Like the Emoji Movie, which is like the bad version. That's the mockbuster of this movie. Or any film made by Illumination. Sorry, you know, just like, you know, these really like kind of like easy to digest lessons, while movies like Inside Out, it's just like, you're gonna be sad. Get ready. Once you start hitting teens, oh man. You know,
just make sure you got that Brazilian helicopter pilot nearby
that you can think about, you know, in your darkest moments. Yeah, it's a movie so much about how as a child you let go of things and you grow up, and it's sometimes it's tough and sometimes it's going to be terrible, but sometimes what you just need to do is go to your parents and cry, and you're going to cry and there's not going to be a resolution at the end, but you'll feel better because you had a good cry about it.
Right, because she still lives in San Francisco.
None of her problems are like Deus Ex Machina'd away, you know, right. All the problems are still there.
Still had like a horrible first day of school. Doesn't matter.
Crying in front of everyone. You
still
just gotta
there.
live with that.
Yeah. I think it would be interesting if they did, if Pixar decided if there was a sequel, it was just sort of like as an adult. I think handling that would be fascinating.
Interesting.
Because going away while and impatient, I wasn't surrounded by kids. I was surrounded by peers and older people and a lot of older folk. And you would be drawing out these things where like the trauma of, like, imagine if this movie, she never resolved the fact that like when her mom goes, you keep a smile because your dad, it helps your dad out. Like, that's the sort of stuff that affects adults that they had when they were kids, and it sticks around.
That's how you get the Joker.
And that's how you get the Joker, you said? Now, what is that? How are you getting that one?
Leave that in. No, it's just like, you just gotta keep smiling, or whatever.
Oh yeah, well yeah, like you turn into a cynic or something. You try to find you find the healthiest way to cope, which often can lead to addiction and things like that. Which addiction, that same guy was talking about earlier, who argued that trauma was just basically a belief in an unreality, said like addiction was the coping mechanism to that belief in unreality. And so his example that he gave was like, so you have a mother and a daughter, and the daughter is angry because she can't have cookies, and the mother, who grew up in a house of rageaholics, is terrified of anger. So she says to the daughter, don't get angry. Good girls don't get angry. But then the child hears, good girls don't get love. I'm sorry, let me repeat this. I'm ruining everything, and I don't really want to edit this out, so we're just going to start over. The example is there's a mom and a daughter, and the daughter is angry and wants cookies. The mom has grown up in a house of rageaholics, so she's terrified of anger, and she says, good girls don't get angry. But then the daughter is going to hear, angry girls don't get love. And so then she's going to grow up for the rest of her life being like, I can't get angry about stuff. And so now she's growing up and goes to college, and there's quite a lot of things to get angry about when you're in college. But if she wants to be loved, she can't get angry. So now she's going to start suppressing that with alcoholism or sleeping around or whatever thing can overcrowd this tension that's inside. Remember, the emotion has gone in through the front door. It's got to go out the back door. If not, you're going to have a full house. And either you can start expanding that house or just open the door and get it out. And typically that's why counseling is helpful. It's because you're in a safe place where you can get that out. And trust me, I think it's fair to say that everybody has had something that has very much frustrated them and they haven't been able to resolve. Because alcoholism and sexaholism and other forms of addiction are socially unacceptable, there are socially acceptable ones, kind of like here in the Western culture of work. And that is seriously destructive. That can be seriously destructive. And I think an Inside Out movie that was like, let's follow the adult would be really interesting, because you're seeing, like, I think it's easy to see Inside Out and say it's a kid's movie with these really interesting themes, kind of like how, we were talking about this off the record, because we have a record, I guess, about how Marvel movies are very much kids movies with fun adult stuff, but then the Marvel television shows are adult shows with characters kids like. And I think it'd be interesting if Pixar did that switch too, where they maybe did like an Inside Out that was an adult movie with things that kids like. But I guess that was Soul, because Soul seemed way more
barely
adult. Barely a kids movie. Yeah. And in fact, it seems like most of the complaints for that movie were the things that were kiddie, like having a joke every 12 minutes, which was kind of ruined the tension. Like, I wanted to feel things pretty deeply in that movie, but then it was like it would just spike right back up
like
for the joke.
Family Guy style cutaway jokes.
Yeah, it was really weird. Strange. Yeah. Hey, hey, 22, remember that time I turned into a cat? Cuts away to him as a cat. Okay, I don't really need that. Just let me feel things. So, I don't know. That could be interesting, because again, like, while at the center, even though it's a really great image, the movie with helping it paint the image of how emotions function and how even thoughts can function too. I mean, the one scene where she's choosing to run away, and the last of her core memories, or you could say core values is really the term we use the most. So like a value that you could track your actions and emotions and things you did back to this one thing that's a core part of yourself. When that falls apart, the train of thought falls apart, because typically when you really disrupt your way of thinking or see that you've done something that's against what you normally do, you can become very narrow-minded internally, not in the sense of like a dangerous narrow-minded, but literally it's hard to not focus on anything other than what you're doing, because if you go beyond it, it disrupts it. It's really fascinating. Anyways, the movie's great, but we already said that. Triple dead gum.
Yeah.
Had to squeeze that in there real quick. But I don't know. I could keep going about. You know what? Here's what I'll say. I went away for anxiety and depression, for serious stuff. It was really tough. This movie was really connected with me. It was really helpful. That's about all I got, man. And the rest of my experience is going to show up throughout more episodes. Just pretty much what I've said to everybody else I've talked to. Everything else I've learned.
Interesting, like hook for future episodes.
Everything else I've learned will passively come out in conversation. It's just, it's who I am now, man. I got that island now, the center island.
Well, now I'm just wondering if like we're going to tune in and you're just going to like break out into tears during one episode.
That'd be great.
It's like, oh man, he really connected with Black Widow. I didn't expect that to be the movie.
I really hope I don't connect with that. I mean, I hope it's good, but like really, like after WandaVision, which I finally finished, I'm like, why would I want to watch something for 2 hours when I can watch something better for 8 hours? It just doesn't make any sense.
Our big episode is going to be my eulogy for the Marvel television universe.
Eulogy?
When it's finally decanonized.
Oh,
Like,
that's right.
Like, oh man, sorry, Dan. Cloak and Dagger.
You mean the Netflix one?
Well, Netflix, Cloak and Dagger, Runaways, Aegis of Shield. It's gonna hurt, but it needs to happen. I need to grow up. This is me losing hockey.
Dude, all that work just to see something get canceled and taken off of the canon. It's like the equivalent of having pop vinyls and finally realizing they don't mean anything.
I finally understand how Star Wars fans feel. You know, what do you mean the Thrawn trilogy isn't canon? You know, I'm almost awesome. 30 though. It's too old. It's too old. I need to stop caring about stuff like that. Yeah, man. Inside Out, really good. Give it 2 thumbs up. 10 out of 10 bags of popcorn.
Classic Ebert.
But yeah, so like, is there anything else you want to say about the hiatus? I'll say this. I'll say that the way you told me was very funny, because you just like hither of nothing. You're like, hey man, I might be going away for a while, which is like the most foreboding sentence you can tell somebody. Yeah. Imagine if I like walk to my boss and be like, I might be leaving for a long time. Like, okay, dude, you know, and then you're like, it might be 2 weeks, might be longer. And then it was like months. You're just like gone.
It's like 6 weeks, dude.
It was
but
like
when I was on the flight back, I downloaded a ton of podcasts to catch up on all the news I missed, and it felt like I was gone for months.
It's a long time in these times.
It was ridiculous. I literally I went to the center when there was a different president, and then I came back, and now the president's canceled. Oh my gosh. And then Gina Carano's making a movie with Ben Shapiro? What? Like, I was texting you, like, I got a layover, and I think I texted you because I just heard that. I was like, when did this happen? Like, what are you talking about? But the writing was on the wall. The writing was on the wall for her.
Yeah, that was like 8 controversies ago, too.
I know.
Like, how long ago was
that? That's how behind I am. Oh, man. Well, I had the I'm up to date on some Twitter memes. I made the BK Crown joke. That was there.
Right.
But we can't really detail that one. Just be worried if we're both wearing BK Crowns. That's all.
Yeah. You missed Bean Dad? That was.
I heard about Bean Dad, but I don't think I heard. I heard about the hair with the Gorilla Glue.
Yes. Yeah.
There was the Gorilla Glue hair. I'm really glad she was able to get the help she needed. That was good. That was a good resolution. Yeah. During a couple months of poor resolutions. I mean, I had a good resolution at the center, but like everywhere else, it sounded like wasn't very good. Me over here, there's an insurrection. I'm sorry, Dan, but I gotta go.
Yeah, I think you missed the Capitol riots too.
No,
right?
I was there for that.
Okay.
I was there for that. What a wild time.
Yeah.
But you know what? Before we just keep running out of steam and talking about stuff that does not matter, something fun I want to introduce. And yes, Logan Sharp, I'm definitely stealing this from you, from the Reformed Gamers, because I think it's really cool, and gives you gives us a platform to talk about things other than movies, or just finding a movie to talk about things that aren't related, like Inside Out, which I guess it is related, but. The Reformed Gamers does a thing where they just basically recommend something, and they just literally recommend anything. It's just the recommendations thing, and I really, really like that. It's just neat. So going to the recommendation thing, because Dan, did you have anything prepared? If not, I can go first, or I could be the example. So you,
I see you pulling out a notebook. So I'm wondering, how many things are you going to recommend?
No, I had the notebook just in case I needed to keep notes for the it's a podcasting trick. Like, let me put a pin in this, and then you.
Right.
Come on, man.
Seeing behind the curtain now.
Yeah.
I have a couple of things I could recommend. How many things am I allowed to recommend?
Keep it short. I mean, here, let me recommend mine. You can kind of see what I was feeling. So I did talk about how I played games while I was at the center. So basically while I was there, like, to help you really refocus from where you are and focus on what you're doing, they take your phone away for a bit. But they do end up giving it back, because they also get people that are local going to the center, and those people could just go home. So they're like, we don't really feel super good about like people coming states or countries away just to have their phone taken away. So after a couple of days, they'll give it back. But I have Xbox Game Pass. And if you don't know what Xbox Game Pass is, basically it's pay $15 a month, unless you do a little trick, and then it's a lot cheaper, which you can search online just to save time. I won't explain it. But $15 a month, and you get access to a ton of games. You basically get access to Xbox's main library, so like all the Halo games, all the Gears of War games, which is super cool. Right now they have all the Bethesda games, so you can catch up on like all the Elder Scrolls, Fallout games. Evil Within is one of my favorites. That's a really good game. And you can just play these games if you have, like, say you got an Xbox, you pay this, now you just have those games. I mean, it's a subscription service, so you don't really technically have them, but you have access to play them. But the coolest thing about Xbox Game Pass is also this thing called xCloud that's included, that is literally on your phone. If you have a compatible phone for Game Pass, you can just stream the game to your phone as long as you have a controller. And so I'm able to pair my Xbox. Well, I took an Xbox controller with me, and they didn't take it away. So I was like, okay. And I can pair it by Bluetooth to my phone. And then my phone is streaming. Like, I played like 80%, maybe like 60 to 80% of Gears of War Ultimate Edition on my phone, just to kill some time, some total me time, self-soothing time. And I didn't have an Xbox there. All I had was my phone and controller. And they just recently, I believe, opened it up so that if you go to xbox.com and you have Game Pass, you can just log in. And then if you got a controller, just play it on your laptop, computer, whatever you got. So that's my recommendation, man. I think it's great. At home, I've been playing a lot of games, and my wife, she never played console games really growing up. So there's a whole wealth of good games. Like, we went through Halo last year, all of them. And man, 5 was just as bad as everyone said it was. And I hate that game. And then now we're going through Gears of War, playing through 5 together, and it's a blast. And it's all because of Game Pass. And so that's my recommendation. I think, like, if you're someone who's always wanted to get into games, but like it's expensive, literally an Xbox One controller used might be $30. You got to make sure it's a Bluetooth compatible one if you buy it. And then Game Pass is $15 a month to be playing a lot of sick games. So that's my reco.
Interesting. I'm going to recommend 3 things.
Solid.
I'm going to start a thing. First, every episode, as of this is a decision I'm making right now, I'm going to recommend a different Bible commentary.
Oh, cool.
I'm a big, it may never ever show on the show outside of this one segment, but I'm a huge nerd for Bible commentaries. It is a horrible hobby because it's incredibly expensive. So, but if you keep listening,
good thing you order from CBD, right?
I used to.
Or I'm sorry, did they change the name? Isn't that right?
It's just Christian Book now, because when most people think of CBD, they don't think christianbook.com. So we still got those weird calls. But so if you keep listening, hopefully I'll help you build a great biblical library. So my first recommendation is I'm going to recommend Douglas Moo's Romans commentary from the New International Commentary. Douglas Moo is the foremost author of Romans commentaries. He initially wrote a first draft for the Wycliffe Bible Commentary. However, he only wrote a commentary for books 1 through 8 of Romans. And years later, he returned to finish it in this completely different series.
Oh, cool.
It is the premier Romans commentary. He also wrote a Romans commentary for the NIV application commentary series, which is a terrific one for devotional or Bible study usage. So that is my recommendation on that front. The other thing is I have 2 TV shows to recommend. One I watched during quarantine, and the other I watched all in pretty much one sitting. The first is a show called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Service. Have you ever heard of this?
You've talked about it a couple times, yeah.
Have I talked about it on the show before?
You may have mentioned it on the show or in a pre-show. I don't know.
Maybe. So it only lasted 2 seasons. It's on Hulu. And the part of why I want to recommend it is if you're a fan of the show Doctor Who, there are very few shows that are similar to Doctor Who. Like they have a lot of overlap with fandoms, lest we forget Super Wholock on Tumblr. But there's not a lot of shows that's like similar to Doctor Who. Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Service is a show that is really similar in that it has a large cast of quirky characters. It's very British, and it is decidedly high concept science fiction. It stars Elijah Wood as my favorite Elijah Wood character, which is guy who is very nervous and keeps getting pushed into weird situations.
So like Wilfred, is this like a continuation of Wilfred?
It's like Wilfred. It's like if you ever just seen a picture of Elijah Wood, he looks kind of nervous. It's that where this guy Dirk Gently shows up, and he is a holistic detective, which means he doesn't bother himself with clues or leads. He just believes that the universe will lead him to where he needs to be to solve the mystery.
That's
and
awesome.
Unfortunately, it's Elijah Wood, and so he just keeps showing up in his apartment and bothering him. It's amazing. It's a really fun, quirky show for 2 seasons. It's great. And the only other detail I'll give is that Brad Dourif, who you may know as the Chucky doll in the Child's Play films, his daughter is in the show as a holistic assassin, and it's the best thing in the world. Highly recommend. It's only 2 seasons. Be forewarned, it got canceled before it was finished, so the second season ends on like a million cliffhangers, but it's still great. The other thing I'll recommend is we briefly mentioned something called the Snyder Cut a second ago, and the Zack Snyder's superhero franchise, everyone says it's like this super dark look at what if superheroes were mean and had mean emotions. And finally, there is a show that does that concept perfectly, and it's called Invincible.
Oh, dude, I've had so many people recommend this to me.
It's incredible. All of your friends are correct. It's currently only has 8 episodes out on Amazon Prime. My friend is a huge fan of the comics, and I have not yet read them, despite the fact I have the first collected edition sitting on my shelf. He tells me it's different a little bit from the comics, but it's better, is what he said. So, okay.
Which is typical Kirkman fashion. I mean, Robert Kirkman, his writing is... He's got interesting concepts, but it's not very good. Like Walking Dead's comic is really compelling and incredibly frustrating to read.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Parts of the show have improved on it, so that makes total sense that Invincible would be the same way.
Yes, and yeah, because I actually read a lot of his Walking Dead comic before the show came out. Or
not before, but
not
I did
before.
Read a lot,
so it was coming out, and I borrowed all of them from my high school's library. If you want to get a gauge for how old I am. But yeah, so Invincible, it's currently only in episodes. It does kind of meander a little bit here and there, but the voice cast is incredible. Of course, J.K. Simmons really steals the show, but the rest of the cast is amazing as well. And its characters are so fully realized, and when it's funny, it's incredibly funny, but for the most part, it's just uncomfortable. It's possibly the most violent cartoon I've ever seen. There's Adult Swim shows that are more violent, but with Invincible, the violence all has weight to it, if that makes sense.
I get it. Yeah. Like characters you like are being hurt kind of thing. So it's exactly more challenging. Yeah.
It's challenging that way where like when people get hurt, they hurt. And one of the gimmicks is, it's a realistic look at superheroes. So when you see people use their powers, it happens in a way that's so tangible and real. Like there's early bits where like the main character's learning how to fly, and you just see him bumping into things. And there's a great early scene where he tries to save somebody, but he doesn't quite have a gauge on his powers, and he ends up hurting them more. And you just feel it, and it makes you uncomfortable, and it all pays off. But the last 2 episodes are just brilliant of the first season. I cannot recommend it enough. It's probably the most compelling superhero show I've seen. So
I guess it's
my recommendation.
Is it? I guess it's like The Boys, but then a little cleaner to be recommended on the show.
Yes. So yeah, there's no. It's violence and swearing, which Christians don't have a problem with for some reason.
Yeah.
Don't.
yeah.
Someone asked me, like, can I watch it with my kid in the room? And everyone's like, no. Do not do that.
Like me over here talking about, like, yeah, I played Gears of War while I was impatient. Tons of violence and tons of swearing. You mean this gun has a chainsaw on it? It's
awesome. But yeah, Invincible. As I'm going through my memories, I don't think there's any nudity in it at all, and there's no sexual content. Yeah, there's none of that. But the violence is very, very violent. It is animated, so I know that different people have different feelings on that. But yeah, so it's in the animation, I believe, is done by the same people that did the Boondocks show. So it has a similar looking animation.
The advertising looks similar. Yeah.
So it's good.
Nice.
Great. So those are my recommendations.
Maybe I'll check it out and then we'll cover it on the show or something.
Yeah. My senior pastor was just like, have you seen this show Invincible? And so he's been really wanting to talk to me about it. So as soon as this is over, I'm probably going to talk to him and geek out about Invincible. So.
Nice. Well, thanks guys for tuning into our first episode in several months. We're sorry that, I'm not really that sorry because I was doing things I needed to, but bummer. Sure is a bummer. We couldn't talk about all those great things that happened in movies the last few weeks, right?
Missed Godzilla, Snyder Cut, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Mortal Kombat.
But we are talking WandaVision. We got it because I loved that. That was great. Yeah, sneak peek. Favorite thing I've seen from Marvel.
Can I briefly talk about one thing from Mortal Kombat I really like?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I was like, I'm not going to care about this at all. Is it still on HBO Max? Because
it might be. I'm not sure.
Maybe I'll just ask a friend, like, hey, can I stream this on my phone? like that'll be it.
So apparently there is an explanation for why this happens, but I just totally missed it because it's so poorly done in the movie. But a character shows back, a character who is definitively killed on screen shows up later, and the first words out of his mouth are just like, "I have come back from hell to kill you," and I was just like, "That's all the explanation I need, man."
Yeah, you don't really. Yeah.
Apparently there is an in-universe reason for why they're back, but he's just like, "I'm going back from hell to kill you." I'm like, "Oh, I'm in. I buy it." Sometimes you gotta leave hell.
Well, I heard most criticisms for that movie was that it over-explains when it's like, you don't need to, dude. All it needs to be is group of people too angry to die. Like, it just they fight each other. I got on my
chair and cheered. I was like, yeah, he's back from hell.
That's awesome.
I don't need anything else, movie. So,
that's awesome.
Point is, I liked it. So you get a mini review.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss on the podcast. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine. A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirleyan, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck. We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the independent theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.